So just to wrap it all up, again, the idea of one-way media communication is starting to sort of give way, if you will, to two-way digital media. It's pretty apparent. I mean, obviously with the rise of things like social media, across the globe, I mean, this is pretty obvious. But in particular, in between these various different demographics, these very different generations, where they grew up very different, we are starting to see the boomer generation somewhat participating in these things. The COC chat live is an example of that, where they do feel comfortable joining in. It's something they can actually participate and speak with. But again, it has a lot to do with this idea of linear storytelling versus more non-linear storytelling that millennials are much more keen on and more comfortable with. The other thing I want to point out as well is that, boomers really aren't necessarily living this, separate, distinct lives in the media sort of sphere. And I know we put up the slide around sort of the use of television and its appointment television. But again, like I said, they are starting to participate in this. They really need probably more education and timing around this to better understand how they can really utilize this medium. Also, too, as they start to retire as well, they will start to have more time on their hands, so we'll probably see an increase of them using it. Remembering back again from the fact that they did grow up in huge technology change, so although the pace of change is very different now than it was when they were growing up, they definitely are comfortable with it. And finally, this idea of, they often get called, sort of the younger boomers get called sort of the shadow boomers, which is kind of that, they're a little bit younger in terms of they even bleed into sort of the Gen Xers, if you will, but the idea that they distinguish themselves as a bit of a bridge between the generational divide. So that's really what I have for today. We've got about, I think, 10 minutes left, so I'm going to turn it back over to Randy, and if there's any questions.
We have one question here from Felix. He asks, doesn't Generation X count?
Doesn't Generation X count?
Well, I think we actually they're kind of a bridge group here, and we...
Yeah, they're actually, so we were looking at the younger boomers as really part of the boomers. So we were just distinguishing, and a lot of this actually came out of, we were reading a Pew Research study, and it actually broke out boomers into these distinct groups and looked at it more from a U.S. perspective. So we thought, oh, that's really interesting. So why don't we do the same and see if there's some differences between that. The Gen X group, absolutely. I mean, I fall within that group. We do act as somewhat a bridge, but not necessarily a bridge to the millennials. So, I don't necessarily have millennial children, so whereas the boomers or the younger boomers would have millennial children, so they can actually act as a bit of a bridge between that. So that's kind of where we were coming at with that.
Another question here, which group do you see as being the influencers? Now, I know in my case, it seems to be the 30s and people in their early 40s are the ones that kind of jump onto the different internet applications such as Twitter and Facebook and things like that, where people tend to think it is the very younger group that's on this, and it's really not. It's an older group in their 30s.
That's a great question. I think it really depends on what you're talking about here in terms of, I actually think it probably is that younger boomer generation that could potentially have the biggest influence on both sides. So, when they start wading into things that the millennials or maybe even the young millennials are involved in, all of a sudden, you start to see them kind of move away from those things, just because of the fact that, they don't want to necessarily be in the same places that maybe their parents are in.
I'm on Facebook.
Yeah, I don't want to be on Facebook. Yeah, so it's kind of that thing. But I do think that they have a huge amount of influence in terms of things like we were talking about before around purchase behavior as well. And when they start doing things and actively buying things, they do have a potential to influence both sides in terms of, again, sort of bridging those generations.
So great. We don't have any other questions online right now, but if you want to, anyone wants to put something into the Q&A box now, we'll address it later directly to you. If you have any other questions, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And it's easy to find those links. You'll find them on the footer area throughout the Delvinia.com website, or a quick search of any of those applications. And we will be making this presentation deck available on SlideShare later today, and we'll have a full recording of this webinar up on the site with a link in the next couple of days. So thanks for joining us today, and watch for some news on some upcoming interesting webinars very, very soon. So thank you, and have a great day, everybody.